Hello and welcome to the commentary box. As always, I am Sam Turner and I am joined by Jake Griffiths as always as well.
Yes, indeed you are, and not just me today, Sam.
Oh, yes, we
Oh,
have a special guest today. Would you like to introduce yourself, Kyle?
Hello, my name is Kyle Richner. I'm joining the commentary box today to discuss about football.
Yes, we are very, very lucky to have you. We were having a conversation after I went to go see Swansea versus Leeds because I was on the TV before the match, which I've been told multiple times now, and I haven't seen it yet, sadly. But we got talking. Jake and I thought we could introduce Kyle to you and show him on the podcast and have his opinions be aired. Before we discuss what topics we'll be talking today, we do have a bit of news, and that is that this is our last podcast for a while. Both me and Jake will be settling into university life in September, and as such, we don't really have the opportunity to do a lot of podcasting. So we're going to take a break, and then we'll come back to you in October. So make the most of this last podcast. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you in October after this podcast. So that's a little bit of an update there. Anything you'd like to add, Jake?
no, I think one more League One podcast I'll do, but apart from that, like you said, be a bit of a break to October. But when we come back, hopefully we can, once to be settled in, well, at least for my League One podcast anyway, I can dedicate a bit more time just to making them a little bit better.
Yes, exactly. So then, let's start with going through the topics we'll be discussing today. Of course, we have Kyle on, who's a Brighton supporter, so it'd be rude not to talk about Brighton. So that's what we'll be doing first. But then later on in the podcast, we'll be talking a bit about away goals, and of course, it's an international break, and so we'll be talking about England's squad selection. So with no further ado, let's talk a bit about Brighton. Now, of course, Carl, you went to go see Brighton last Saturday, was it? Against Fulham. So what did you think of Brighton then?
Yes, well, it's early doors in the season, so I feel obviously our new signings still have time to still need time to settle into the team.
Mm-hmm.
As for our whole of the game, yeah, we missed a lot of opportunities. Brighton should have won the game.
Mm-hmm.
However, Fulham played very well. Took control of the situation, especially like they made advantage of us when we lost the penalty. When Gross missed the penalty early on, and then obviously Schürrle scored to make it 1-0 going into half time. So.
Were you happy with the performance, or were you a bit concerned? I mean, I know
No. Yeah, the performance of all the players was good. As you say, like Gross missed a penalty. Solly March missed a one-on-one opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Murray could have had another.
Mm-hmm.
On another day, that's 5-2 to the Albion. So.
Yeah, because I've always considered you a kind of a defensive side, especially under Houghton, and kind of keeping tight at the back. But you've started the season scoring, really. I've just got some facts here. Like you've scored 3 against Man United. You scored 2 against Fulham. I know you didn't get any in the cup or against Liverpool, but you're scoring goals, and that must be a good sign because you don't have a lot of backup after Murray, and if Murray's scoring and other players around the pitch are scoring, that's a good sign, isn't it?
It's a very good sign for the team, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the problem is Murray. We need to look after Murray. He's 34 years old now, and because we let Hammond go on loan to QPR.
Mm-hmm. Who scored in his debut, incidentally, didn't he?
He did, yeah. We sold Sam Baldock, who was a good servant to the club. We brought in Andoin,
Mm-hmm.
who's currently injured, but he should be coming back after the international break, so that's a good sign. And Lecardia, Lecardia's struggling at the moment, Sam.
Yeah, I was really excited when I saw Lecardia move, was it January? And I thought, wow, if I was Swansea in the Prem, I would want that to be our signing, and we didn't make any signings like that eventually. But that's really exciting player for me, and it's sad to see him not kind of click. Do you think it's something to do with like team cohesion, or is it just he's not getting enough game time? Or
Yeah, I honestly think it's game time. Like he always comes off the bench, and when he comes on, he's not setting into the game situation or he's looking a bit unfit. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I feel like we need to give him a run of games, but it's hard when Murray's in good form at the moment, and the way we play is one off the striker. So it's hard to just get him in there because he started against Southampton in the cup, but again,
not with it.
And you with sort of Brighton, I just want to say that like when you've got such a good goal scorer, and me and Sam were saying the other week, actually a little bit similar to Harry Kane at Tottenham, when you've got your main man who's scoring lots of goals, but you know he's under a lot of pressure to do so. If he gets injured or something happens to him, you've got to look at backup. Me and Sam were looking about Tottenham. We're saying, look, Kane, there isn't really this standout main backup that would be.
Lorenzo's isn't the same type of player, is he?
No.
Well, true, but I mean, like, as in, sort of Murray is your main goal threat. He's sort of not necessarily your target man, but he's the one that your players look for in terms of sort of crossing and things like that. So if he went, you'd want a sort of a backup who's of a high level. And as you were saying about the guy who's not quite getting game time, sort of, if he starts to get game time, and start to sort of come on and start performing well, that'd be a real confidence boost. And if you've got goals coming across many areas of the pitch as well, you know, we were saying the other episode as well about when teams go down, it's not necessarily through sort of like an unlucky goal or something. It's more of the goals they score rather than the goals they let in. Like they never really have that main guy to score. So I think even though it didn't quite work out against Fulham, like Sam was saying about Man United scoring lots of goals, it's definitely got to be a bit of confidence going toward the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Well, both me and Jake have got you Brighton to stay up. I've got Brighton in 16th on my predictions, and Jake, you put them down as 15th. Do you think you'll be safe this season, and do you think you can build on last season, or is it going to be a struggle? But you've had a tough run so far in terms of games, and you've come out fairly well. So I'd like to hear your opinions on how well you think you can do for the rest of the season.
My opinion is for Brighton, I feel like staying up again is the main objective.
Exactly.
We've made some good signings. Basuma looks very good when he came on. I like to see him come into the fold. But every team is getting stronger and stronger each year. So as for Brighton, it's only our second year in the Prem. So the main objective is
survival.
Anything over 17.
It's perfect.
I'd say it's a success.
That's what you want.
Exactly. Shame that Swansea couldn't emulate that.
No, I would take. If you said to me that Brighton finished 17th and had a successful cup run, I'd be happy with that.
Good. Good to hear from you about Brighton. I do hope Brighton do well this season. It's a shame that we couldn't be in the Premier League this season, and perhaps I could have gone to another game at the Amex, though my last experience and my first experience at the Amex was somewhat dreadful with a 4-1 loss. But yes, I think Brighton will do well this season. I do think it's a season to survive again, but you've made some good signings, and I see you doing well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Jake, do you want to say anything more on Brighton?
Yeah, I was going to touch on sort of, if you look at the club as a whole, I just think it's a sort of bit of recognition on sort of how well they've done lately. Obviously, the Amex being quite a new stadium, bringing in a lot more attendance, a little bit more investment going into the club is nice, lots of new signings, and it's good for another team to sort of, started to build a lot in the Championship, a couple of successful seasons and eventually getting promoted. Sort of had a more difficult season last year, but, it is looking more confident, and it's nice to see a team progress and grow. And I think, especially from a fan's point of view, you'd like to see progression in your club. You don't like to see the same thing year in, year out. So it's nice to definitely see a club who is improving, trying to do well, bringing in new players, playing quite exciting football, to be honest. It's not that dull. Lots of goals going on as well. So I think it's just sort of a big confidence boost. And I think to sort of round it off, it is looking better. And I do think they are going to do well this season.
Exactly. Well, that kind of rounds up our talk about Brighton. Now we'll be sticking onto the continent as such, and we'll be talking a bit about the European competitions and away goals. So I think yesterday the UEFA Managers kind of conference was held, and many of the top European managers were discussing away goals, and they kind of all came out saying that they don't want away goals. It'd be interesting to hear your opinions on this. I know, Jake, you before we came on, you had some strong opinions, so go ahead.
Sure. Well, yeah, I was just sort of saying about the away goal rule, and not that, like I was saying, it wasn't affecting me personally, because Gillingham have never been in sort of any European competition, but looking from sort of a just sort of a neutral perspective at games, you know, when it is end to end, let's say the first leg's 1-1, and you play the second leg, and say it's 2-2, and then the away team obviously scored 2 away goals, and you sort of go through on a draw. It just, I think, in terms of that, the actual quality of the match, I think it does lose a bit of excitement, because sort of winning on a draw does sound very, very strange.
Yeah.
And I also think it wouldn't be exactly too much more effort to ask just to go into extra time and penalties, or at least just to penalties, maybe to start if they don't want to do extra time as well. But I think it'd be a nice, more exciting end to the match. I can see why they put it in the first place. You know, just restrict it to 90 minutes in 2 games. You know, if they got a European match during the week and a game on the weekend, I get they're going to make players tired, but managers make changes around the team. You know, they will play other players. A lot of teams around the world, especially the top European sides, they got a lot of squad depth, so they'd be able to at least rotate a couple of players if they were tired. Obviously, like you're saying, the managers have spoken as well. They want to get rid of it, and I think it's quite a reasonable suggestion and an easy thing to do. And I think it should be done, to be honest.
So yeah, I see where you're coming from, Jake. And it leads to situations where goals from one player might be more valuable than another, if that makes any sense. So like an away goal somewhere will be more valuable in terms of the tie than say a goal at home, and that doesn't seem right. Would you agree with Jake, Kyle?
I would agree with Jake. I believe, and I agree, because away goals shouldn't be more, for example, they should be more important than a home goal. Away goals aren't as hard as they used to be, and not as precious as they used to be. The weight of an away goal is it's like too heavy, it's too big, it's not like justifiable anymore. And I feel whether it comes into play or not, no goal should be greater value than another goal.
It's
So,
exactly.
an away goal. So, for example, say you're playing Champions League quarter final and it's 2-1. It's Chelsea versus Barcelona, and Barcelona getting away goal 2-1, and then the second leg they win 1-0 and they go through just because they scored a goal at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that justified for them to go through?
Yeah, and I think
an away goal.
I think just to add on to that, like, could you imagine, let's say, in that game, you know, it's a really, really tight game. Barcelona literally miss out by a deflection or something to concede the second goal. And then they go to the Nou Camp and they absolutely dominate the game. They play incredible football and they get really unlucky and they only score 1 goal. And they win that game, but such a dominant display over the whole game and a really unlucky last game. And then... the other way for Chelsea. So they win and then they go to the Nou Camp and they get so unlucky not to score, and then they're out just because they've scored Barcelona have scored an away goal. It does seem quite unfair and unjustified. I know it might sound a little silly saying, oh, you'd feel bad for the team, but you know, you can imagine if you were the supporter of your club and you played 2 really good games of football and you were so unlucky not to score a goal at the Nou Camp, and then you've just gone away because you conceded 1 goal and you've scored the same amount. It really is crazy. You know, I was quite shocked how sort of the discussion of it hasn't, as in terms of a serious discussion on whether they're going to remove it, hasn't come up sort of earlier in time. And I think a lot of fans especially will be in favour of getting rid of it. And what Kyle was saying about sort of just literally simply saying, you know, 1 goal isn't more valuable than another, like, it just makes sense. It's plain and simple. And I think it's time for change.
Time for change. Let's make European competitions great again.
Yeah.
Add on that, I feel, for example, say it was a 1-1 draw in the first leg.
Yeah.
tactics of the game completely change. The team who have scored the away goal will sit on it and they will park the bus, as they say, and they will play defensive and they will change their tactics.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, they've just drawn the game, but they will go through in that because if the score remains 0-0 in the second leg, they will go through, and that's not justified. At the end of the day, it's still the game is still drawing. It's 1-1. It should be end-to-end open football, but because of the away goal rule, teams will sit on that and park the bus.
And creates negative tactics, which no one really wants to see, especially in kind of
Exactly.
top-flight European football. Just to add on your point earlier as well, Kyle, it's no longer kind of hostile going to, say, the Nou Camp or to, say, Paris Saint-Germain. It's not, you don't have that hostility because often you have around 1,000 of your own fans there when in the past you would have had none. And I think away goals, they're not as difficult as they used to be, if that makes any sense. So it's a flawed rule. You can see why it was introduced, but as Jake, you were saying as well, it needs to be changed, and it needs to be changed soon. So hopefully, maybe in the coming weeks, maybe we'll see some news on it, and perhaps it'll be implemented for next year's round of European competitions. But it's definitely one of those divisive issues, especially if you're an Arsenal fan. Luckily, we have no Arsenal fans here today, but I think words could have got a bit heated. So, yeah.
There are no, Sam,
Yeah.
there are no away goals in the Championship playoffs, are there?
I'm not sure actually. I don't think there is.
No, I don't think there are any away goals in the Championship playoffs, and the both legs in the playoffs are good quality, end-to-end, exciting football as a neutral.
Oh, they are.
Are.
Yeah, I would have to 100% agree with you there. It's something about them. Both legs are like finals. No matter what the score was in the last one, there's always a chance for the team to make it up in the next leg. And playoffs for me are just brilliant to watch. But yeah, I think, as you said, I don't think they do have away goals. So maybe that has something to do with how competitive they are and how interesting they get. Because can you imagine, say, if it was a Nottingham Forest versus Ipswich playoff semi-final, and the second leg was just Nottingham Forest keeping the ball because they got an away goal in the last match? It wouldn't be nice. It wouldn't be nice. Yeah, I think we're all in agreements there that basically it should be scrapped. I might put a poll out on Twitter after this podcast comes out, so you can give us your opinions and see what you think. Yes, now on to our last topic, because of course it is International Week this week, where of course international teams play, and the England team has been announced with a few new faces and a few faces leaving us. If I just read out the new faces that weren't in the World Cup squad, we've got Alex McCarthy of Southampton and Marcus Bettinelli of Fulham coming in the goalkeeper roles. We have Joe Gomez, Luke Shaw, and James Tarkowski coming into the defence. And we've also that's it for new faces into the England squad. I just want to know who you are most excited about. Carl, if you want to say first who you're excited to seeing in the England squad again.
For me, the most exciting prospect for me is Joe Gomez. I've been watching Joe Gomez quite closely this season, playing alongside Virgil van Dijk in the heart of the Liverpool defence, and for me, he looks the complete player.
Yeah,
I'd touch on that, and I'd say that I've seen a couple of highlights of games, and when a young player comes through, everyone gets very excited, and he seems to have a bit of potential. That has happened with Joe Gomez, but he has continued to perform well and play at a high level, and he seems to just keep on going. At the moment, he's on one of those moments where they are just keep on improving, and fingers crossed he's going to get better and better and better. It reminds me a little bit of a little bit of Luke Shaw in a way when he was at Southampton, coming up from being a young player and started to do really, really well, but then slightly, dropped off and didn't quite continue to the level that we thought that Luke Shaw might get to. Where in Gomez's case, I wouldn't say he's quite at Luke Shaw's level when he was younger, sort of improving wise, but I think he's still going, and hopefully he's going to be one of those players who keeps on going through. He's playing in a decent Liverpool side. like Kyle was saying, next to Virgil van Dijk, a very experienced player, a good player as well, and someone who will help him lead and merge, and sort of he's going to help him, put his arm around him and sort of follow him along, and hopefully they're going to be playing a lot of games, a lot of good football. He's going to get a fair amount of game time, and I think he's going to be one of the players who will start to break into the England squad, maybe in the next couple of years, get a couple of friendly games here and there. And if all goes well, I could definitely see him being one of our sort of main centre-backs in maybe 3-4 year time if he continues to play at the level he is.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And I think Joe Gomez is obviously going to be an immense talent, of starting his days at Charlton and coming into Liverpool and really kind of making progress last season, apart from the injury, obviously. But I want to know, can you compare Trent Alexander-Arnold to Joe Gomez? And if you can, which one would you prefer? Because this is kind of a big debate that I would think would be going on at Liverpool at the moment, because they're two youngsters that kind of play in the same position and will be vying for the same place for Liverpool and for England. And I just want to know, ultimately, who would you pick over, which one would you pick over the other?
For me, Trent Alexander-Arnold is because Southgate likes to play 3 at the back and then the 2 wing backs.
Yeah.
For me, I would play Alexander-Arnold as the right wing back position in cover for Trippier.
Mm-hmm.
And I would see Gomez coming into the back 3. So I can't really compare the two, as I would play them in different positions.
Oh,
no, I think that's right. I'm going to say the same. And I think Joe Gomez would literally slot into that back 3, probably more on the right-hand side, and then Arnold could be more of an attacking player a little bit further up the pitch. So they are different. I think obviously right now, I think we'd say Arnold would probably be the better play. He's got a couple of England caps under his belt, having the call up, doing well. But I would say Joe Gomez is definitely up there, and it's almost weird because it's like Liverpool have got a little bit of a difficult decision, but only based on they've got 2 really good young players coming up. So it's sort of a good thing that turned into a little bit of a complication. But I think they should definitely get as much game time again. And I think being at Liverpool and having Klopp as your manager, I think he's a player who he puts a lot of emphasis and sort of pride into bringing young players through. He seems like someone who really cares, and he would sort of help them to improve, give them enough game time for them to get to a better level, puts faith in players who maybe have not got the experience and the qualities at first as other players. But I think he's at a great club to do it. And just all the best to him, and fingers crossed another good England player to come through the ranks, and we could see some serious change in sort of English football and the new players coming through, because all the time it seems to be just very positive about England at the moment. I think with the new call-ups as well, seeing some older players sort of step down, the likes of Cahill and Vardy, who we were discussing a little bit before on air, that Carl was saying, probably wouldn't quite get into the squad again, which I probably would agree with that. I don't think you could see them coming back in. Sort of Joe Hart and Ashley Young not being called up, but sort of younger players coming through as well. It is a lot of positivity, a lot of youth in the team, and it seems what we need. And I think Southgate doing sort of a good job. But yeah, to go back to the actual question that you did ask me, Sam, and to agree with Carl, no, I don't think you can compare them, but 2 very good players who could definitely act at least as covered out in the England team.
Good. It is scary to see that players of our age almost are now playing for England, isn't it? It's
very.
A bit daunting, because I'm looking at the ages of the England squad. I'm thinking, gosh, Trent Alexander-Arnold is only a year older than us. It's
mental.
A bit scary. But on to a bit about goalkeepers' situation at the England camp. It's a topic that we love here at the commentary box. Apparently,
we do. Talk about a lot.
Top time we've talked about it. But Jake Griffiths, you're a goalkeeper. Tell us your opinions on the England goalkeeping situation at the moment.
Always interesting, I think. I always think, Pickford did have a really, really good World Cup, and I think it'd be interesting to see if he stays in number 1. But I think in terms of backups, there's always so many options from so many teams. So we've seen Hart sort of not being taken now, so more of a decision to sort of get youth players in. Hart sort of had his England career, and I think he sort of knows himself he's probably not going to get into that squad again. So he has got And then you look at the likes of players who we used to see being the backup. So people like Tom Heaton, who I've not heard of his name for a while. I don't think he got a call up, so that was quite interesting. But he is getting slightly older, so it could be a similar decision there. I think we could see Pickford as probably staying the number one, but there are a lot of keepers for England. I wouldn't say there's one standout one. I know Pickford had played the whole World Cup, but it wouldn't sort of surprise me too much if he went for another goalkeeper in some friendly to try them out and could end up changing. I think Southgate's a manager who definitely like to go for who is actually playing the best. He doesn't quite look at this sort of big club England call-up thing where we used to see all the big clubs getting all the England call-ups. We're seeing him go to other teams like Burnley and Southampton and just sort of experimenting a bit more. So it's interesting, but I think for now anyway, I think Pickford would definitely be probably his number one. I know obviously Hart and Heaton didn't get call-ups, probably not going to get any call-ups ever again. McCarthy has been called up as well. Butland, has Butland not been called up?
Butland has been called up, actually, interestingly.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. I can't remember if he was or whether there was some of the new guys coming in. Yes, we got obviously Southampton keeper, and did you say also Fulham keeper?
Yeah, Marcus Bettinelli.
That's the one. He's been called up as well, and I think that's great for him, great for confidence, great for Fulham, and hopefully he will use that to sort of build on and sort of start playing well, because it will be great to have so many England keepers who are doing really, really well in the Premier League, which obviously we often struggle for, because it used to be sort of looking at the Premier League and seeing Joe Hart at the top from City. And apart from that, all the other keepers were all right down the bottom end of the league. And we never really had sort of someone down there who was sort of the standout, really good, really class keeper. So far, things are going so good. Pickford playing well. Yeah, it's good. It's interesting. And actually, to ask you a question, Kyle, now as well, because we talk about call-ups in England quite often as well. With Murray, we have talked about it before. Do you think Murray should get a call-up? And if so, it'd be interesting to say if you do think, or if you don't think, sort of why, and sort of try and. It's hard because, if you do it on stats, sometimes you could say, Murray, he plays a lot and he scored lots of goals and he looked decent, could be a cover, things like that. We look at the history of England, we can see players like Ricky Lambert who get called up and didn't exactly do much for England, did a fair bit for his club.
I think he scored against Scotland, didn't he, if I remember rightly?
Yeah, something like that. Or he scored on his debut and scored another couple of goals. But no, it'd be interesting to see sort of what you think on Murray. Yeah, take it away.
For me, no.
Interesting.
The
reason I say that, first, is because, yes, Glenn Murray, he's a very, very, very good team player. He'll put a shift in. He'll hold the ball up. He'll run down the flanks. He'll support his teammates. But for me, Glenn Murray's 35 next month. I feel it's so, it's a short-term plan. It's not something that you want to. For England now, and Southgate and the whole team, it's a youth team, it's a young team. They're building for the future now. For me, bringing in Danny Welbeck to the squad, I think is not right. He's not getting game time at Arsenal.
Good point.
For me,
no, I agree.
For me, I would bring someone like Callum Wilson. For me,
that's an interesting one, because we never hear his name even surrounding England, yet he's had a decent start to the season. And as you said, he's on the right side age-wise compared to Murray. And they're kind of similar players. They're quite defensively forwards. They use their kind of physical abilities to hassle defences. So it's really interesting.
Because you play with the one up top, which is Harry Kane, and for Murray, it would be a like-to-like. You can't bring on Murray. If you're bringing on Murray for Harry Kane, he's to hold the ball up, but he's a similar type of player to Harry Kane, just a bit older. For me, Callum Wilson's only 26 years old, and he's quick, and he runs at defenders.
Yeah.
So for me, a striker coming off the bench, you want someone who's going to cause a threat straight away, not someone who's just going to hold the ball up. Like, say you're 1-0 up, you want someone to hold the ball up, win you free kicks in dangerous areas. I'd rather bring on someone like a Rashford, someone like a Callum Wilson, someone like a Sancho from Borussia Dortmund. Someone who's going to get the ball down and run at defenders and cause them problems.
Yeah, I think it's almost like Murray's time has sort of passed already. You know, he's getting to a point in his career where he actually is playing really, really good football and doing very well in the last couple of years. But it seems like
it's too late.
A couple of years before that, he would have been ideal, and we could see him in that England team. But now it just seems like
There's no point now, Jake. There's no point now.
Yeah, it would just be a novelty almost, wouldn't it?
For Southgate right now, he's looking towards the Euros already, and by the time we get to the Euros, he's going to be 36 years old.
Yeah. And is he going to be at the same ability? I know he's using his strength to his ability, but how much is that going to hamper him in 2 years' time? But can you see? I don't think I can see him in the Premier, to be honest.
You've got to take into consideration fitness, and for us, England, we're a big footballing team. We have so many quality players coming through. Look at we won under 17 World Cup, under 20 World Cup. We have youth talent coming through the ranks. Yeah,
and for that reason, why should we look at Glenn Murray when we have all these players coming through?
Thank you. Yeah, that's my point.
That is all right. I think that draws it nicely to an end, this podcast and this topic in general. It's been a pleasure having you, Kyle. Hopefully we can have you on another time in the future. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me.
That's all right. And of course, thank you, Jake, for of course joining us as always.
No worries, my pleasure.
And we'll probably see you tomorrow, is it, for the League One podcast?
Yes, fingers crossed.
Okay, good. So thank you for listening. Of course, you can listen to us on other outlets such as iTunes, YouTube or Spreaker. And of course, you can get in contact with us with Twitter, which is at Box Commentary, or Instagram, which is also at Box Commentary, or you can drop us an email, which is the commentarybox.contact@gmail.com. But of course, yes, thank you for listening. I hope you have enjoyed. I've been Sam Turner. We've had Kyle and Jake on the show today, and see ya.
Goodbye.